Going
Are we
live.
live?
We're live.
Okay. Hey, YouTube. Welcome to the May San Jose Astronomical Association Imaging SIG meeting. It is my great pleasure tonight to bring a gentleman that I have been familiar with for a few years, named Gary Lopez, as our guest speaker. Gary is an amazing astrophotographer. He hails from the Monterey area, and he'll be sharing with us some of his techniques and some of his images. And without further ado, I hand you to Gary.
Thank you very much, Bruce. Hello, everybody. Thank you first to Bruce and Glenn for hosting this and inviting me to speak. I want to make sure that Bruce is off the hook. I'm really not an amazing astrophotographer. I mostly just try to make beautiful imagery. And so for real astrophotographers in the audience, I start with an apology. You're going to do things that may make you cringe, but I'll be glad to share how I've done it, and maybe some of you will find value in that. By way of introduction, I saw that. I just realized that Bruce put up a quick note about who I am and my background. And so unfortunately, I had also prepared some remarks, but I think for those that haven't read something about my background, I think it's worthwhile to learn what I've done before that has led to the kind of astrophotography you're about to see, because it may give me an excuse for why I do what I do. So with that, I'm going to pop open my screen. Let's see, a window. Oops, now it won't give me permission. This didn't happen to me last time, I remember. So I have to get permission back to be able to show my screen. How did this happen last time? Glenn, didn't we go through this before?
Sounds familiar.
Yeah. Share screen. Yeah, it's temporarily blocked, so I just unblocked it. Okay. So let's try that again. Here we go. Nope, not the whole screen. Let's select a window. Okay, here we go. All right, sorry for that. I'm not as familiar with Hangout. Now, are you guys seeing my screen, I'm hoping?
Yes, we do.
Good, right on. So by way of background, I'm actually a research scientist by training. I'm a marine biologist, oceanographer, and I did my doctoral work at Scripps Institution of Oceanography, and I was a lecturer at Scripps and at UCSD for a number of years. And I'm a quantitative ecologist by training. So that's what I got trained to do. But prior to that, when I was younger, I was really interested in astrophysics, and I got twisted by Jacques Cousteau. He moved me in that direction, and so I ended up doing that for a number of years. That work went on for a number of years, as I said, lots of research, lots of teaching. But I was also interested in filmmaking. I have an art background. And so I began making films for Encyclopedia Britannica and National Geographic. I was a writer and a producer. And then I actually made films for Captain Cousteau for a number of years. And I worked both in Hollywood and in Paris making those films. So I learned a lot about filmmaking and telling stories and making beautiful imagery from Cousteau and others. But I was also interested in software. And so I was actually a coder. Most of my quantitative ecology work, I wrote the programs that I used, including I actually wrote my word processor. That's how old I am, because that's been a long time. And so I started a software company about the time I was doing the media work. And that company got very big, actually. And we did all sorts of different software development, mostly for education. We did work for Apple and several other groups. And I sold that company in 1993. It was based mostly in the West Coast, but we're kind of all over. And then I worked in a corporation in Harcourt, which was the acquirer of my company for a number of years, until and was basically guiding a number of their divisions in software development. And ultimately, Harcourt was acquired, and I was done. I was able to move on. And so I started a nonprofit organization about 17 years ago now, a foundation that is still going around, going strong. I put a lot of time in. We produce basically AI-based personalized learning solutions, especially for middle school, high school, and college in the U.S. We serve about 6 to 8 million students a year. Most of the states have our stuff, and right now with the COVID stuff, we're really busy. And that's how I spend my time. But I've always been interested in astrophotography. So that's kind of the art and technology background. My interest in astronomy started pretty young. I'm 70 now, and so this is I was 12 or 13 when I finally bought a telescope with my paper route money, and I bought a little 2-inch reflector, or rather refractor, and I ultimately made a camera out of a box from that housed my mother's shoes, and started trying to take photographs. This is actually my first astrophoto photograph. From 1962 or 61 or something. And you can see I was learning a lot about, it was about a 30-second exposure, that the Earth was moving. And I had to really grok that a little bit and realize I had to move along with that movement, or I was going to have blurry pictures like that. I kept fooling around with this over the years, even when I was doing marine biology. When I sold my first company, I moved on to some fancier gear. I was living in Lake Tahoe at the time. Actually, this shot is more recent, but this is the gear. I was able to get a 10-inch Smith Cassegrain from Meade. It was the biggest thing I could carry out to our dock where we were living there in Lake Tahoe. But I also was connected with Santa Barbara instrument groups early on, as they were starting to put out cameras back in the late 80s, early 90s. And I was able to get my hands on a very early ST4 and then an ST6 and so on. So I got to start messing around with digital imagery pretty early on. This picture of Hayakatake is actually shot with film, but it was a great year, 96, for those who were around, because we had Hayakatake and Hal Bopp and lots of cool stuff going on. Continue to mess with this. And in the last few years, I really got more involved more vigorously because, as you all know, well, many of you may know, the technology has gotten very capable, and even from your backyard you can do some pretty amazing stuff. So this is my, I have a small, so I've been sitting in my studio right now, right on our property in Monterey. And I have, just outside the studio, I have a small observatory, which I'm gonna walk you out to here in a few minutes so you can see my setup. Now that picture you're looking at now is a William Optics, a 5-inch, so 132. And we'll talk about that when I get out there, but it's God, it's so much fun to use, so capable. And the other picture is just, it's where I'm sitting right behind that computer, that Apple desktop you can see right now as I'm talking to you. And you can also see in the room some large images. And I'm going to really get into that a little bit more, because that's where I've been taking my work from, not only acquiring these images, but ultimately looking for ways to display them such that other folks can enjoy them and actually put them in their homes. So that's the backdrop. So what I'm going to show you today is my approach to taking these pictures. And again, for real astrophotographers, I apologize. I do things you would probably find appalling, but it's how I do it, and I'll let you see what I do. If you want to look at my stuff, I invite you to go to www.garylopezphotography.com. It's the website I put up to display my work, and you're welcome to look at it. And I'm going to go there later in this presentation. So with that, I actually have a little note to myself what I'm supposed to do next. So I'm going to actually go to that website right now. So I'm going to see. I'm going to close this. How am I going to do this, Bruce? I'm going to try to close this and make something work here. So I stopped that, and I'm going to try to move over to another image. Let me see if I open this up. Nope, not that. What do I want to open up? I want to open up this and move that over there. And okay, so I'm stopped presenting. And now I'm going to open up another window. Which one? Gary Lopez Classic, this one. Okay, so you should be seeing my screen again. Yes, you are?
Yes, we are.
Okay, so this is from my website, and again, I invite you to go take a look if you'd like to see it maybe better than the way it's being transmitted to you right now. I'm showing you this because it gives you a sense of the kinds of imagery that I'm interested in making. What you see, this is a collection that I'm calling the classic collection because it's more sort of straight up astrophotography, as most people do it. At least this is how I do it, but other people do it similarly. And you can see as you kind of scroll through here, there's a lot of emission nebula, which is my main interest for a couple of reasons. In part, I live in Monterey, and when I take you outside, you'll see a light dome off to the north, which is a regional airport, and another one over here, which is Monterey itself. And it's really dark behind me where Big Sur is, but it's maybe a Bortle 4 to 6. And so it's not a lot of light pollution, but enough that I prefer to shoot narrowband. But additionally, I really like narrowband because the creative possibilities going beyond RGB. I can really control things more and make images that I find pleasing. So as you scroll down, you'll see a lot of different forms of narrowband imaging. Take a look, and I'd love any feedback you can give me. Today, I'm going to show you how I approach making these images. And the one I'm going to choose is this one. This is the Cygnus wall, and this is a Hubble palette, well, kind of a Hubble palette version of this. I chose this one because it's among the simplest I've shot. It's 11 hours of data, and it's pretty straightforward, but I think it will show the process with the least number of complications. Not infrequently, I find myself shooting 20, 30, 40 hours of data to make an image. And that's sometimes what it takes to sort of get what I'm looking for. But additionally, that can be stretched out over sometimes months, sometimes multiple years to get access to the object sufficiently long to get those data. In the case of this object, I got all the data for the 11 hours in 2 nights, which was like a miracle. And so, but let me show you how I made this. So to do that, what am I going to do next? I'm going to take you over to show you the data themselves. So again, I'm going to, how do I stop presenting? And I'm going to open up another window, which is actually my one of my external drives, where I have these data housed. And open another window. And what is that calling it? It's not Lightroom, Cygnus. I think it's this. All right, yeah. So what you should be seeing is a screen that says Cygnus wall on the top. And then you should also be seeing a couple of folders that have dates on them, July 10th, July 13th, etc. So as I said, I collected these data in a couple of nights. So let's look at the data from July 10th, which was July 10th last year, just not quite a year ago. And you can see, I'm hoping you can see, and Glenn, are you seeing an oxygen, hydrogen, and sulfur folders? Yeah. And so I collected, anticipating, going and doing my research at Astrobin and looking around. I figured that I wanted to shoot this as a narrowband, and I thought that these three gases were really gonna give me what I wanted, because I wanted to start with a Hubble palette. And so the first night out, I collected all three. I collected about 3 hours of hydrogen. And if you scroll down, you'll see there's about 3 hours. There's 3-minute exposures. There's about 60 of them, probably a little more than that. And I threw away a few that were not working. But I only collected about an hour of oxygen and about an hour of sulfur, because that's all I had. So I had about 5 or 6 hours to collect before the object went away, or there was some reason I couldn't get more than that. I can't remember what it was. This is typically what I'll do, because I knew that there was most of the structure was going to be in the hydrogen signal, and a couple other things I want to point out, because I'm going to keep coming back to it. You'll notice there's an HFR number next to these folders, and for those of you that use this, it's a way of judging just whether the image is in focus. It's looking at the half radius, and the smaller the number, the cleaner the data, the more focus. And I use the HFR number to combine with the star count to really judge whether or not a sublight is got real value or not. And this was shot, the data I'm about to show you were shot with a ZWO ASI 1600 cooled camera. It's a 16 megapixel camera. It's got, I think it's 3.8 micron patches. But it also, with that William Optics FLT 132, that 5-inch refractor, which I'm about to go show you. And in my experience, if I can, with that combination here in Monterey, if I can get data that's in the low 2s for the HFR, that's pretty good. So this is pretty clean stuff for my experience here. And I will tell you, these data were even better than that. It's less than 2.3. I had a lot of data that were in the 1.8, 1.9. So it was some pretty clean stuff for me. So I was pretty excited about that. So what I would typically do at this point, now that I have these data, is I go take a look at it. And I do that by going over to Pix Insight. And let's see. Boy, man, I'm going to have a lot of open screens here. Glenn, you're going to hate me. Put that away. Put this away. So bear with me, everybody. I'm opening and closing stuff here. So I'm going to open up that. Okay. So I'm going to change screens again. We're going to go over to Pix Insight. Stop. And now I'm going to open a new screen. Pix Insight. Here we go. So you should be seeing a new window, a Pix Insight window.
Yep.
This window, Pix Insight window, is showing you a project, this particular project, the Cygnus Wall project. And I probably like most of you, I keep all the iterations and experimentations I do in creating the image, and I rely on Pix Insights to keep that project for me, so I can go back and look at things and experiment. But additionally, I use Lightroom an awful lot. It's one of my favorite tools, which I'm sure astrophotographers in the audience are going to cringe at, but I really like that tool too. And so those are the two ways in which I really keep track of things. And then I create these ridiculously long names for my files, so I can kind of remember what I did and keep notes. So let's start with these data. I'm going to open up, I'm going to drag over one of the sublights from hydrogen and drop it into Pix Insights. Oh, wait a minute, it's not going to do that. Hold on, I got to do it this way. That's right. I remember it choked last time I tried this. Are you seeing this open up, Glenn?
Yes.
Okay. So this is a hydrogen sublight from that first night in July. And let's stretch this. I just used the screen transfer function and stretch it. And there it is, right? And wow, it looks pretty damn good. There's a lot of structure there, especially for 1 3-minute exposure. I was pretty happy when I saw this. And if you dive in there and look, it's pretty clean. It's got a lot of noise because it's only 1 3-minute exposure, but man, there's a lot going on there. It's really kind of cool. And you can just see a lot of structure even with this. Now let's look at the hydrogen and see what we got there. So this is a hydrogen sublight. We'll stretch it. And now that is not as much signal, but here's something interesting right away. We pull these side by side. I don't know if you can see this. So what you see is there's the Cygnus wall and the fan coming out from the Cygnus wall, this fan structure in the hydrogen data. But look here on the oxygen, that wall really isn't represented, but the fan is. And so I'm thinking, so the oxygen is really, the signal is really contributing to this portion of the image, this fan that's coming out from that ridge of dust and gas. Whereas it looks like the hydrogen is representing both. So let's look at the sulfur. So open up the sulfur folder and open up one of those and stretch it. Oops. And now here's yet a different representation. Now in the case of the sulfur, look what we have. The fan is not really represented. It's not being shown in the sulfur emission data, but there is some structure to the ridge itself, to the wall. So it looks like we're getting data that's really representing that fan, really showing as the fan and the oxygen. We're getting these data from sulfur are really showing the ridge portion of this. And not surprisingly, as often is the case, the hydrogen is showing both. So that's good to know. So with that knowledge, let's close all these. What I would typically do now, well, actually, let me stop. Glenn and Bruce, do I take questions along the way if people want to stop me and question what I'm doing?
Well, we don't have any questions yet, but
Okay.
if you want to pause in the future, we'll have people ask some questions.
Yeah,
And
feel free if somebody, if I'm going to, feel free to jump in. So what I do is at this point now I stack each of those data sets and see what I have. So in the case of the hydrogen, this is 1 day of data, and it looks like this. And so that's 3 hours of hydrogen, and that looks damn nice. That's just clean stuff. I like that a lot. Looks really good. And here's the oxygen. This is about, what do we say, about an hour? Not too bad for an hour, but you can really see that fan is well represented there. And then finally, here is the sulfur. And again, now you can really see in that sulfur data that strong signal showing the ridge. And yeah, there's some contribution to the fan as well. So those look really good to me. That's a great start. And so what I would also do at this point is I'm going to actually build an image with this 5 hours of data and see where I am, because it'll help me plan what I do next, where I put the energy, how I collect the next set of data, because ultimately it's trying to get me to a certain place here. And so when I stack this, it looks like this. And I use in Pix Insight, I like to use pixel math for everything. And so I use pixel math. This isn't actually the formula, but I use pixel math and using the Hubble palette approach, using red is represented by sulfur, green by hydrogen, and oxygen is blue. And when you do that without any weightings, this is what those first 5 hours of data look like. Nice, really nice. So at this point, I would actually take it another step. I would now start to move this in the direction of the more classical Hubble palette colors that we've all grown to enjoy, those golds and blues. Now, I would move this over to Photoshop to do that typically, because I use selective color and start moving this into the color that I'm looking for. But for whatever reason, I think this was the time when I was experimenting with Lightroom to see what I could do with it. And so I actually moved this into Lightroom. And let me show you what that looked like. So again, I'm gonna move it to Lightroom. I'm gonna take this image, what I'm showing you right now, this 1 day of SHO representation, and we're gonna move it into Lightroom. Okay, and how am I going to do that? So I got to close this and move this. Where am I? Back here somewhere. There I am. Okay, so I have a lot of screens open, everybody. So I'm having trouble finding myself. There we go. So I stopped that. Now I'm going to move over to a Lightroom window. There it is. Okay, so you should be seeing Lightroom now. And so this is the image we just took from Pix Insight. And again, you can see in my filing, my naming convention, this is SHO 1 day. It's a TIFF. And so it turns out, I don't know why I was doing this, but I was experimenting to see what I could do. And I ultimately decided to see if I could move it to the colors I wanted. Using in Lightroom, if you're familiar with it, among the tools you have is an SHL color tool where you can slide back and forth on hue, and you can change saturation, you can change luminance, etc. So using the hue tool, I began shifting this in the direction that made sense for getting the Hubble colors I wanted out. So first, you'll see the sliders over here change. You're going to see the green slider shift and you see it's shifted all the way over to the yellow side. And so now we just went from this greeny stuff to this more goldy stuff. See that? And then we're going to slide the yellow slider all the way over to orange, a little bit more, the colors we expect.
Yeah.
The orange
Gary,
a little bit more. Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt, but just so you know, we don't see your sliders, or at
Oh,
least I'm not seeing your
bummer.
sliders. Wait a second. Let me see.
Are they off the
Yeah,
screen?
they are not on the screen.
Oh, really? Oh, that's too bad. So you're not seeing this whole application then, huh?
No, I'm not
Well,
sure if you have
dang.
to share that
Wonder
window
why.
or maybe share your entire desktop instead of just
Let's
the
try
one
that.
screen
Yeah,
or one
maybe.
window.
Yeah, let me try that. I don't know why it's not showing because it says it's showing the application. I'm going to stop and let's try it again. To your point, let me try the whole screen, see if we get what we're looking for here. Entire screen. Oops. So how about now?
Yes.
Right on.
Now
Okay,
we see everything.
Right on. So no, that's a good tip. We got for Lightroom, we got to show the whole thing. So let's go back to the beginning here. So this is what the imported image looks like. And then when we slide the green slider, so the sliders are over here on the right side of the screen, and I have the cursor over it right now, where we have hue that we're about to slide for each of these values. And we do green first. You can see the slider jump over from the green to the yellow side or orange side. And you can see how this thing gives a more gold hue and so forth. Now the yellow to the orange get a little bit more gold, and so on and so forth. And as we pop through these, you'll see it starts to be more representational of maybe the more familiar Hubble palette. Are you seeing that, Bruce?
Yes.
Okay, right on. And so it turns out you can do this, but it's not quite the same, but I liked it, so I just kind of kept going. And then for me, I started doing various calibrations of the colors to pull them into the right color temperature, again, by hue. And there's a point where I start messing with the contrast to pull down some of the cloudiness and maybe do a little pull back a little bit dehazing without actually trying to hit any of the subtle structure. And then I started messing with saturations, and I'm just kind of popping through here. And if we move over here, you can see these sliders shifting with these changes in saturation as I'm trying to tweak out the colors to get them closer to what I was seeking. And then, running between the vibrance and saturations, and ultimately I exported it when it looked like this. And as I recall, I brought it back into Pix Insight, I believe, and messed with it a little bit more. Because at this point, if you dive in here and look, let's take a quick look where we are. So I like the colors, but look what happens. See all this color noise? See that kind of blue blotchiness and all that? That's part of when you make these shifts in moving the palette in the right direction, whether it's in Lightroom or it's in Photoshop, you start creating color noise. And so now it's time to see if we can pull that back a little bit and see just what we have left. If we pull back the color noise, how much actual noise is there left with only 5 hours of data? So for me, what I like to do to test that is to go back into Pix Insight. Okay, and let's see. I'm going to run back there again. I'm going to stop this, stop that, and open up that Pix Insight folder again. Window, Pix Insight. Here we go. And so I put this over here. We'll put this away, and I imported it, and it looks like this. And I'm not going to show you this. Let me see. Yeah. So this is what it looks like when it got imported, like this. And what I did was so if you get in here and look, you can see that color noise. You can see that kind of blotchiness. And so what I did next to see if I could pull that color noise down, but also add some definition, was I typically will lay a luminance layer over this of whatever the best data is I have. And in this case, the best data, as you know from my earlier comments, was that hydrogen. So I created a luminance layer out of the hydrogen, And let me show you what that looks like. So there we go. So here's that hydrogen data, but I did a couple of things to it to clean it up a little bit more. You can see it's been masked here. Let me back it up. I think that's right. So it started like this. Oh, no, it started like this, not too far back. And as you dove in, I could see a little bit of noise. And I thought, well, maybe I can clean up that graininess a little bit. And the way I would typically do that is kind of a two-step process. I will use a multi-median transform to get that fine level noise. And I don't know about, well, if you guys have used this tool, but you can really mess with this and really get the noise reduction down to the scale of whatever it is you're working on. In the case of this image, it's really fine scale noise. So you really have to fool around with these settings to get to the right scale for the pixel mapping to get the noise down. So you fool around with this, but I'm also, this is a luminance layer, so I'm really targeting luminance rather than some other aspect of this. And upon applying this, what I was also doing is I was actually masking it. So I would protect the parts that I didn't want to be affected by the noise and start knocking back the structure. So I was, let's see, wrong direction, go this way. I masked it and to protect that structure. And then I ran the multi-scale median transform to pull down that. But then after that, I would reverse like for example, at this point, let me see where the mask is. If you expose the mask, right now the mask looks like this. When I ran the multi-median transform, I had masked it this way because I'm trying to expose. So the red is the masked sections, the unmasked is the darker sections. I'm trying to get rid of that color noise that we saw out here in these areas. And but then once the color noise is knocked back, I want to pull back any of the fine structures I've lost. So I will typically reverse the mask at this point, go back to here to protect the areas I just hit with multi-median transform, multi-scale transform, and then I'll hit it again with deconvolution, this tool. And just tighten up all the exposed sections, which you can see are primarily I'm really tightening up is this ridge of gas here, all that fine structure we want to get back. So when that's done, we have this really tight luminance mask. I use LRGB, again another. It's a way of combining signal. And in this case, I turn off the RGB and just leave the luminance turned on. This is a cool tool. I like it because you can change the lightness and saturation of this application of the luminance, and you can also, it has a chrominance reduction feature that you can turn on to really knock it back. And so when you do that, it goes and you apply this again with this first day of hydrogen data. And that's now been cleaned up. It goes from looking like this to looking like this, and it looks a little cloudier. But if you dive here and look what happened to the look of this. See all that? Can you see that blue blotchiness and kind of chopped up look?
Yep.
Yep. So you hit it and boom, look at that. And so it's possible at this point you may want to hit it with something else to tighten it up, like maybe going back to hit it again with deconvolve, but it looks pretty good to me. And as I recall, I exported it again back to Lightroom, and then I cleaned it up a little bit further. So I won't drag you through that again, but I guess the point is that it looked pretty good. What?
Couple quick questions. How did you create your mask? Range selection.
So what I did was really simply, the reason this says clone on it, because that was actually the mask. What I'm doing typically to make a mask is I'll just make another version of the same image, just like that. Drag it off and make a second clone, and then take that, oops, and drag it over the original image like this, and boom, you got a mask.
Okay.
And then you can invert it over here. You see them up here on the top here. You can invert it either way you want to use it. And you can also turn it on and off. And you know it's on and off. You see the brown indication on this tab goes from masked is this reddish brown. When you turn off the mask, it goes away. Yeah.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes. When you used deconvolution, you said, right? Or was it?
I use deconvolution, yeah. I use multi-scale median transform to try to get to the fine structure and get the noise away. But then I'll hit it with deconvolution to try to tighten up, pull some of the structure back.
Do you use a basic set of settings consistently with deconvolution, or do you get a point state function to do that?
I will do the default with deconvolution, unless when I use it, I get something weird. Like what you can often get with deconvolution is you'll get rings around stars, and so there's a D-ring feature you can turn on. But even with that D-ring feature turned on, sometimes you'll still get ringing, and it can be pretty nasty. So you can start adjusting like the number of iterations. You can adjust the noise threshold to pull that back. So it's not for me, for my work, when I more often than not, it's going to work out of the box. But when it doesn't, then I start screwing around with it to see if I can bring it back. And sometimes I'll change from Gaussian to Poisson, but for the most part, I find that just sometimes just changing the number of iterations, because sometimes that de-ringing happens after only 4 or 5 iterations of this regularized application. And when you pull it back a little bit, maybe you can avoid it and still get some of that tightening structure.
Great, thanks.
Are there any other questions or horrors?
Nope, not yet.
Okay.
But please, if anybody has any questions, please post them on the chat and I'll pass them along to Gary.
Yeah, thank you. So at this point, I'm thinking, okay, this looks pretty good. I mean, damn, that's for 5 hours. That looks really, really nice. But I typically I'm not satisfied. I think 5 hours, it seems like a miracle to have something that good for 5 hours. So I'm going to go get some more data. And luckily I got another night a couple of days later where I could shoot. And so let me move over there. Let's see if I close this, what happens. So let me see here. So, here we go. Turn off. So stop my presenting. Let me open up the other folder again for you. Sorry, I'm opening folder here. Hang in there. I'll be right back. Okay, so here is that second night of data.
Yeah, I don't see anything at the. Oh, here it comes.
Here it
Okay.
comes. So as you saw, this was July the 10th. So 3 days later, on July 13th, I was able to shoot again. And but this time I decided that the sulfur, I had enough, in part because when I compared the sulfur and the hydrogen, I realized it looked, for the most part, the structure I was seeing in fine detail in the hydrogen was the sulfur fine detail was represented in the hydrogen. So I didn't have to go back and do it again. I wasn't going to miss anything that I thought was important by not having sulfur. But the oxygen, I didn't have enough there. As I said, that really represents the fan part. And so I wanted to go get more of that. And ultimately my strategy at this point was I was going to get more oxygen to have more representation of that fan. But I was really going to only count on the oxygen and the sulfur for color mapping. And all the structure was primarily going to be coming from the hydrogen. I was going to use that as a really fine luminance mask to get all that structure back. So I really wanted to put my money into the hydrogen primarily. Unfortunately, I got a lot of it, but it was one of those up and down nights. And I think I got I want to say 5 hours more of hydrogen, something like that. But you can see, well, you can't see, but the HFR jumped way up. It was up to 3.6, and that was the highest. Most of it was under 3, like 2.8, 2.9, but it wasn't as good as that first night, not nearly as good. And so it was disappointing because now I had a lot of it, which meant that I could get rid of the noise we had in that first night's data without having to use the multi-scale median tool or and then having to go back with to deconvolve it, which might mean I'd be able to keep that structure cleaner without having to mess with it. But man, with this high HFR, maybe not. And the same thing was true of the oxygen data. But you know what? It didn't. I only took an hour of it. I wasn't as worried about this because I was just going to use it for color mapping. It didn't matter if it wasn't quite clean because I'm just going to lay this really good luminance layer over it to bring that structure back. It was just to tell me where that signal was going to be color mapped. So I wasn't concerned about that. But now it brings you back to a real question about how you use these data. At least it does for me. And that brings me back to Pix Insight. So let's see, we'll open that up and move this over here. And with Pix Insight, Pix Insight, I could just show that as an app. Yeah, okay. So stop presenting that. Open this window. Pix Insight. Okay. So you should be seeing Pix Insight again. And let's close this one day. Now here's the 2-day data, and this is now 2 days of data, not just the 2-day data. This is combining day 1 and day 2 all together. And when you put them side by side with the number first day's data, you start to say, maybe that's getting a little bit soft. I don't know if you guys can see that, which you're here in the room with me, you can see it, but it starts to look a little bit softer. And you're going, I think I've cleaned up some of the some of the noise. If we get in there deeply, you can see that the noise is better, right? This is the 2 days of data. This is the 1 day, and you can see there's less noise. But look at these stars. Look how soft they are around the edges, right? And you're going, you know what that is? That's that HFR data that's over 3. That's not good. So you at this point you start thinking about strategies for keep keeping the noise down, but at the same time you really don't want to lose that magnificent structure we got on the first night. So all you can do, what I do is I just start experimenting, and so I just basically did it again. I stacked the 2 days of hydrogen and the 2 days of oxygen and the 1 day of sulfur, and registered everything, and then made a new image, an SHO image. And so to remind you, the other one looked like this. This was day 1. This is 5 hours of the data, just one, and this is now all the data from both nights. So you got about, I don't know, I think 11 or 12 hours of data in total here with this second image. And you can see, I don't know if you can see it, but it looks a little softer. To me, it does. Again, the noise is down, but there's a softness to it that I'm not happy about. So I did the same strategy here as I did in the day 1. I imported this into Lightroom. Let's go do that. I imported it into Lightroom. What time do we have? How long am I supposed to talk, Bruce?
Well, meeting can go to around 9:30 or 10.
Oh,
if you want. You got all the time you want.
Okay, sorry. If anyone wants me to stop, just say so. Just stop me. I've never I don't know about you guys, but this is the first time anybody's been in the room with me when I've done this. I'm always by myself. This is really weird having you guys here watching this unfold. So you bring this back into in the Lightroom, and what you're going to see. Let's open up Lightroom so you can see this. What you're going to see. Entire screen. There. Wow, what a pain. Okay. So what you're going to see is those data here. So this was this is the 2 days of data, and I won't make you go through the horror of watching this transform itself, but it goes from here, we just brought it from Pix Insight, and ends up here. See that? And so it's the same technique of changing the hues and saturations to get to this point. I brought this back into Pix Insight, and I laid another luminance layer on it, and I brought it back in, and it looks like this, like that. And then again, I clean it up in in Lightroom here, and it ends up looking like this. So what it turns out happened in all this was I did it both ways. I used it where I used all the data, and I made a luminance out of all like 11 hours of hydrogen, and I compared it to the same image, but this time I only used the first day of hydrogen for the luminance. And for me, it was that just using just that first really clean day of hydrogen made all the difference. I was able to retain the structure and still get rid of the noise, and it really made a big difference. So I think that's part of what I'm learning in doing this. I often hear from other astrophotographers that the more data is always good. And honestly, for my work, I find myself throwing away probably half to 2/3 of the data I acquire just because it's not very good stuff. And when you put it in your image, you're losing things, you're losing structure, it just doesn't look very good. So I think sort of judiciously going through your data with a really critical eye, and then trying a number of different approaches. And it always comes back to what you're trying to accomplish. For me, having the detailed structure really matters. And then ultimately, I find myself more often than not relying on the primary signal for that structure, and then almost everything else in the image is just color mapping. And so I don't spend a lot of time acquiring it because I'm just going to lay over it anyway. I'm going to stop because I'm talking like a crazy man. Are there any questions or any comments anyone wants to make at this point?
Yeah, and let's
Go ahead, Glenn.
for the YouTube, I was saying let's remember to take a breath because they're 10 seconds behind us. So when we ask for questions, we need to wait and see if.
Okay.
But go ahead,
We'll
Bruce.
wait for a moment here.
Yeah.
I was wondering if you use any tools for evaluating your quality of your images, of your subs, or if you just use blank, or what is it that you do to weed out the stuff that you don't want to use?
I start with I use a Sequence Generator Pro as the tool for acquiring the data, and the Sequence Generator Pro throws off HFR and star counts, at least the way I've set it up. Before I look at anything, Bruce, I check that first. And when I have HFR that's out of range, or typically HFR alone is not enough. If you have a low HFR, you got to make sure you have a high star count, because it may just be a low HFR because it's foggy or something. So low HFR and high star count, and I keep it. Anything that falls out of a range that I'm sort of setting for myself with the data set, I don't even look at it. I toss it. And then I take everything that remains and I actually import it into Pix Insight, and I don't even use Blink. I look at each one of them individually, and I actually look at it pretty carefully before I choose it. So it's a really tedious process, I guess, come to think of it. Just listening to myself say that, it sounds tedious. But I will do that, even though there may be several hundred, just to give my best chance of having something that's really tight. So it's I guess I'm ballparking it, Bruce.
Okay.
In a painful way.
So you're having SGP put that in the file names, that information, or?
Yeah, I am. Isn't that scary? So like in this one, you can see that it's 2 days of data. You can SHO 2 days, Lightroom color. I did all this stuff in Lightroom. Came back, Pix Insight. I hit it with 1 day luminance mask that had this done to it. So my file, ultimately, I will often exceed the number of characters allowed for a file name. And I'm trying to keep track of what I did, because it can go on for a long time. And then I have to start a new convention. But I just find that I'm just getting old, I guess. My memory is not so good that I can remember all the stuff I did, and not infrequently the order I use really matters, and this is a way I can keep track of it. I'm sure there's a better way to do it. People that are actually smarter than I on this call can tell me how to improve that.
Well, my question, that's interesting information. My question was a little different though. So you said
Oh, sorry.
that SGP throws off was your term, the HFR and the number of
Yeah,
stars. So
it does.
it in file names or in fit setters, or how
Oh,
does?
I'm sorry. In the log for the event or for the session.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the if you look at the event session and the data from that, it will give you those data for each of the images acquired.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I've seen
Yeah.
Chuck's Astrophotography on YouTube
Chuck's on?
do something similar.
Oh, Chuck's not on this
He,
call, is he?
no, Chuck's not. I don't think Chuck's on this call. It's hard to tell from here, but I have seen him use a box that he pops up while he's
Yeah.
doing his acquisition, and it has all of your recent images line by line,
Yep.
and he can pick and choose which ones to knock out. And
Yeah.
you know, I have a graph of HFR and stars when I do it, and you know, I also sometimes will zap something
Yeah.
that way, but.
Yeah, I mean, for me, after a few years of doing this, I've just begun to, that's kind of what I fall back on to really make all my determinations. And I don't know if there's a better way, but that's what I'm up to. Let me move back to Pix Insights, because I want to show you that at this point, often for the imagery I make, I find myself going back and considering whether there's a different way to make the image, a different approach. In the case of, let's see, how do I get through this here? Get this out of the way. Are you seeing my Pix Insight window right now?
Yes.
Okay, right on. So in the case of this, you saw how that ended up, and I like the look of that with what is kind of a pseudo Hubble palette. But I thought I'd try a few other things with these data to see what I come up with. And so one of the things was I did I stacked it. And built an HOO image where hydrogen is the red channel and oxygen is both the green and the blue, and it looks like this. But I also tried another one. I don't know if you guys know Steve Milne's work, but Steve put out a formula, a pixel math formula, where he combined all three sulfur, oxygen, and hydrogen into a different pixel math configuration that approached something that is more natural, something that if you were looking through just an RGB approach to this, it would look more the kind of colors you might expect. And so that's what this is. This is using Steve Milne's formula in pixel math. And I went, yeah, that looks pretty good. I kind of like the way that looks. So I imported that back into Lightroom, did all the same stuff, and I brought it back in, and it looked like this. And then I hit it with the luminance again, and ultimately it ended up looking, like this, which I really liked. That's actually one of my favorites. And so it had remarkable dynamicism to it. It just pops off the screen. It has tremendous three-dimensionality. And so I think the reason I'm showing you this is that these are the same data as we use for the other approach. Yeah, but sometimes you get structure and dynamics in the imagery and other aspects of that really reveal more in the image just by the approach you take to showing it, how you stack these data. And this is, I think, a perfect example of this. It just makes a huge difference. Anyway, with that, Lightroom. I won't drag you back into Lightroom. I think you've been tortured enough. So let me, if you guys are okay with it, it's kind of dark outside. I can turn off a light. So this is if there aren't any questions about the processing, I'm going to show you my rig so you can just see where I get this stuff, because I've had a couple people ask me about the observatory I built, so I can kind of show you what it looks like in real time here. Is that okay, Bruce?
That's fantastic. Yeah.
Okay. So
Yeah, I answered a couple questions in the YouTube chat for you.
thanks.
So yeah.
Thank you. Like, how tall am I? Or
Yeah, what that you're using Sequence Generator. Somebody wanted to know what the acquisition program was, and
yeah, Sequence Generator Pro. Yeah.
yeah, Alan Fan had a question about.
Oh, Alan's on? Oh, damn. I want Alan on. Damn it. So everybody, Alan Fan may be the best astrophotographer in the world, and he happens to live in San Jose. Oh no, this is embarrassing. Alan, you should be doing this presentation, not me.
His question was
what's
about
Alan
your folder designation. HFR less than 3.6 is the average of that night. And
the average of that? No, that was just everything.
Oh, that was the
max.
Number.
Yeah.
Yeah. I misrepresented the answer.
Yeah. Everything that was the max. I have somewhere else I can tell you what the average was, but for me, it's always some balance. And actually, I will stack multiple times to see if I add more and more higher value data, what impact I'm having on the image, especially when I get down to the details that I'm trying to reveal. So there's a cutoff at some point. Sometimes I get away with numbers that seem pretty high, but it doesn't really impact the structure I'm trying to reveal. Other times I throw away a ton of stuff. I've had nights where I've thrown away all but 10 or 20% of it. It's a tragedy. Talking about detail, anybody take a look at Alan Pham's imagery. It is mind-bendingly good. It's the best I've ever seen. So I'm going to turn off the camera, and I'm going to walk over to another camera. I have my cell phone. I'm hoping it's still working. Let's see what we got here. Oh, wait a minute. Let me turn off the other screen too. Hold on. I'm going to turn off the presentational screen because it'll interfere. There we go. And then, let's see. I'm going to turn on this camera. Are you seeing me? Of course you are.
Yes.
So let's unplug this, and you should be hearing me fine. So I'm gonna walk outside my studio here and set you up over here. I'm gonna turn on a light here. Here we go. Let's see. How does that look?
Looks great.
Oh man.
Yeah, we can see you, just fine.
Yeah.
Good light level.
That's surprisingly good. There we go. All right. Damn, that looks good, huh? This is not an outhouse. I mean, it appears to be an outhouse, but it's not even a converted house. I actually built this. This is a sliding shed observatory. Whoops, I had the chain on here. So to orient you, I'm in my backyard in Monterey, California. I'm pointing roughly north. So in that direction is the Monterey Regional Airport. It's about a mile away. The beach is about a mile and a quarter away. So I get fog coming in this direction not infrequently. And there's a little bit of a light dome there, and then there's a light dome over here to the northwest a bit with Monterey itself. But in this direction, it goes out towards Carmel Valley and Big Sur, and it's nicely dark. But so the Bortle skies here like 5 on average, but you probably got a 6 or 7 over there, and you might have like a 3 or 4 over here. So it's kind of neat. If I can point to the south, which I like to do that more than I can. So if I pull this back. There we go. Are you seeing this?
Yep. We are seeing it.
Nice. Okay. So this drops down. I won't bend it down now, but here's the rig. So I'm on a deck. Beneath the deck, there's a steel pier down here. Are you seeing me? Or am I too low?
You were dipping below the camera level.
Yeah, we're gonna fix that right now. Let's see. Let's get the whoa crap. There we go. Let's see. Let's do that. There we go. That better? Yeah.
Yep.
So below the deck is a steel pier that's in a cube of about 3 by 3, a 3-foot cube of concrete. It comes up through the deck and attaches to this odd-looking pier, and this is called the bended knee pier. It was made by Lacerda. I don't know if they make it anymore. And the reason I use this is because I hate meridian flips. I hate meridian flips, and so with this pier, the scope can pass through the meridian and not whack the pier. It comes through this open space. Just your standard Atlas EQ6 mount, or Skywatcher has the same mount. It's the same device, same mount, nothing fancy. And then this is a William Optics FLT 132, a 5-inch refractor. I've had a lot of telescopes. I've had a lot of telescopes. Cassegrains and all kinds of Newtonians and Ritchie-Cratians, and God, I've had them all. And I keep coming back to refractors. I just love the contrast of a refractor. They don't break. I don't have to do anything to them. They work every time. So I love these. I love refractors. I've really settled on. I've had a number of cameras too. I've shot DSLR and a number of other CCDs, but I've really come back to the ZWO ASI 1600 is still my favorite. And actually, Alan Pham turned me onto this camera, and I've just really enjoyed it. The key for me is still the filters. I have Astrodon 3-nanometer filters. I'm able to shoot through not only this light pollution, but I can shoot hydrogen on a full moon, as long as it's not too close, and it's a pretty good signal. So the filters make all the difference. This is a little 50-millimeter guide scope, but I hate PhD guiding with a passion. That the sound of that thing going offline used to drive me crazy. So I finally bought an MGen guider. It's this device here. It has its own camera here. It never fails. I've used this for 3 years. It's never, ever failed. I can have fog come in for 20 minutes and it picks up. Somehow it doesn't fail. It's amazing. It's like, it doesn't matter how much it costs. Buy this. It's worth it, because you'll never lose data for bad guiding, and the guiding's really, really tight. What else you need to know? And then I have all this running through a SkyFi hub that I can manage from indoors, from that the desktop you saw me sitting at. And then all the wiring for this is I can run it. I typically will sit out here with it because that's how I am, but it runs into the studio, and I can run it on cold nights, which doesn't happen often in Monterey, but I can run it from indoors. So this is the rig. Are there any questions about it?
Yeah, Gary, how do you manage your MGen with your with Sequence Generator Pro?
I don't. I used to do dithering, and I don't do it anymore. It used to drive me crazy, and so I am anti-dithering. But you can.
What are you using for gain with your ASI 1600 generally?
It all depends what it is. Typically, I'll use Unity, which is 139. But for really faint, I'll go to 300, and for really bright, I'll go down to 0. It kind of comes down to what I'm shooting. The target sort of dictates. 139 is my default, but if it's really going to be, if I can get short exposures with a 0 gain, I'll do it. But most recently I shot what Spaghetti Nebula? What's that? SH-240, and it was 5-minute, 300, maybe it's 10-minute exposures at like 300 gain, and it was still a really faint sublight. So yeah, that's what I do.
I was wondering about fixed pattern noise, if you ever have a problem with that.
I haven't. I've seen it. I haven't experienced it. I did have some fixed pattern noise. I acquired the ZWO ASI 183, and I tried that for a while before I sent it back to OPT, because it had not only hellacious just had hellacious noise. I just couldn't deal with it. I had all kinds of fixed pattern issues. And
Amp load's
what was the other?
crazy too.
Yeah, yeah. And well, I'm just not smart enough or good enough to deal with those small pixels too. And what was the other one? The ASI 178, same thing. That same sensor, for whatever reason, I can't deal with it. But the 1600 is just, for me, it's bulletproof. It's a wonderful camera. So, if there are any questions, I'm going to bring it back inside. Okay.
Let's go.
Okay. So here we go. So this you're probably seeing is my studio. And so you can see it's very close. I'm going to put it here for a moment because I want to talk a little bit about what you're seeing on the walls. So I wanted to talk a little bit about why I do this stuff. I'm interested in making beautiful pictures, dramatic pictures from space, because ultimately I want to display them, have other people enjoy them, have them become part of people's homes. And so what you're seeing in my studio is some of the imagery I've made, and you can see it's pretty big. Been printing some of this 40 by 60, and for the last almost 2 years, I've been experimenting with different media and approaches to displaying this imagery. I've come down to a few approaches I really like. There's some metallic infused papers that I really like, and acrylic mounts. But I've also settled on a few other things, like, I don't know if you can see this here. I find myself also printing in a different way on some watercolor paper and doing some float mounts for some of this imagery. So the reason I show you this is because I want to talk a little bit about that next, and sort of in the conversation with this. I'm going to turn off this camera, walk back to over here. Oh. And I should be back, yeah?
Yes.
Hang on just a minute here. I have to catch up with.
Yeah, because poor Glenn has to put up with my running around here.
Okay.
All righty, thanks, Glenn. So I'm gonna come back here. Let's see, yeah, I'm gonna come back here. So I'm gonna go back to my website. I want to show you stuff here for a second. Back to my website. Excuse me. Crap. Where is it? Oh, here it is. Okay. So we're back to my website, I'm hoping. And what you're seeing is that same collection of imagery that I spoke of earlier. And as I said, my interest is primarily emission nebula, not only because I find them easy to shoot, but they give me a lot of creative control on palette and a lot of other things where I can reveal and structure and a lot of things and compose pictures in certain ways. And so you can see there's probably nothing here that shocks you. It is kind of like the stuff you've seen other people do. Part of the reason I'm so hyper about getting as much structure and as much detail as I can is because I want to print it big like this, and I have to have big files and lots of structure before it doesn't fall apart on me. But what I ultimately this imagery I want to have in people's homes. So I actually have my imagery represented by a gallery in Carmel, Gallery Sir. And as I've listened to people come in and look at this stuff and feedback, I found that people were looking for things to put in their homes or looking for almost decor, something that made them feel a certain way. Sometimes astro imagery like this can be a little moody. It's very dramatic, but it can be dark. And so I began looking for ways to represent this differently, really more different artistic representations. And let me show you where I took it, and I'd be curious to get people's feedback. So this is a collection of this imagery that I took in a different way. In the case of the image that we saw together, that Cygnus wall, here's a different way of representing it. In this case, I sought ways to invert some of the darker sections. And many of you know, as you shot your imagery, that there is an awful lot of structure in that deep dark areas that you're bringing in. I mean, you're collecting with basically 12 f-stops. And so if you can bring it all to the surface, you can see a lot you really can't typically see if you leave it in the sort of the dark form it came in. And so in the case of this imagery, I've sort of been working on these new processing approaches in which I could invert sections of it and really reveal a lot of that deep structure you can't typically see. In the case of a lot of this, as you can see, I've taken the stars out because sometimes I find them a bit distracting. And then worked on the color translucency, so it has almost a watercolor texture to it. But one thing, it's an impressionistic approach that I've been working on, such that you're really emphasizing the contrast between the shadow and the light, and as such, you get a lot of three-dimensionality. So I'm not sure you can see it on your screen, but this has remarkable three-dimensionality. It's just quite beautiful. And I'll back up here. And you can see I've done that in a few places. And as you I invite you to go to the website and take a look. I'd really like to get some feedback, maybe you have some ideas how we can do this differently. Because to me, what's particularly interesting about this is that people aren't doing this yet, right? And I can see what we do in astrophotography ultimately becoming a fine art form, a real fine art form, because there's a lot of flexibility. And it's remarkable, the people that see this imagery, that come to the gallery and other places, they seem to be emotionally impacted by it. And they're not sure why, because I guess the structures and shapes and textures are familiar, but they're not sure why. But they do have an emotional impact. And needless to say, the palette has a lot to do with it too. So I won't bore you by making you go through all of this, but take a look. I've tried a lot of different things. I will tell you, some things really get people's attention. And so I've begun looking to, well, first of all, let me just show you Gallery Sir real quick. So this is the web page for Gallery Sir. The reason I want to show you that, and so I'm one of the artists there. Let's see, and there's traditional photography there, but then there's me and my stuff. The reason I want you to know this exists is if you're in Carmel, I want you to go there and take a look, because I can show this to you on a screen, but what I want you to do is take a look at it when it's hung on the wall at Gallery Sir, because they're big pieces. And I'd love to get some feedback on what you think you're seeing, or how it makes you feel, or what you can do better or worse or whatever. Because I don't have a lot of astrophotographers that see my stuff. I have a lot of people decorating their homes, but not astrophotographers. And I'd like to get your feedback because I do think all of us are sort of beginning in a place where this is going to become more and more prevalent. When I sit in the gallery, folks my age aren't as interested. They're looking for pictures of Big Sur or Pebble Beach golf course. But people the age of my children in their 30s are really drawn to this. Millennials seem to be drawn to this kind of imagery. Maybe it's more representational of how they're seeing the world. But so that's really good stuff. The other thing I've done is I've tried to push this into the fine art world. And so let me go back here to my website and show you this. So this year, I've been entering this kind of imagery in photo contests. This is the International Color Awards. They've had it for a couple of decades now. And it's your traditional photo contest, except it's big. It has, this year it had 6,100 photographers from 73 countries put in their stuff. It has a lot of categories. I put in 6 of these images into this contest. And amazingly, I got 4 nominations and 2 awards. And it's the first time they've given awards to astrophotography. I guess my point is, I think we're breaking through. People are starting to represent this. It's just mind-bending that they see this as something worth really paying attention to. So take a look and consider your own imagery. Consider putting it in and getting it out there and seeing if we can start to get a movement here for astrophotography really being a legitimate fine art form. And because there's a lot of, I mean, think about this. This is so brand new. Anything we do is brand new, really. I mean, it's brand new territory. We're not just doing, Weston and Ansel Adams retakes, reboots here. This is brand new stuff. The last thing I want to show you is this. If any of you are doing this kind of work, there's a movement right now called the Artist Support Pledge, and it's was started by an artist, Matthew Burrows, in the UK. He's a painter, a couple of, almost 6 weeks ago now. And the way it works is you put your work up, you sell it for no more than $200, and when you have $1,000 of sales of your work, you take $200 and you give it to another artist. You buy some of their work to keep the money flowing in the art community. The one thing Shelter in Place has done, among the many terrible things it's done, but one of the things that's unfortunate is that it's closed all the galleries. Galleries aren't open. And a lot of artists, that's the only way they make their living. So I suggest, so they've generated, actually, this is a little bit old, they generated about almost $30 million so far by this for artists to keep things moving. I ended up joining this about a week ago. And I decided I was going to give 20% to another artist, but with the remaining 80%, I'm giving it to the Monterey Food Bank. And I'm happy to say that inside of 48 hours, I generated almost $3,000. So with selling my stuff at like $100 a throw for a small print. Oh, actually, that's an exaggeration. I sold a lot of small prints, but then I had people go to the Gallery Sir and buy some big stuff, and I was able to give that to the food bank. So if any of you have interest in supporting this and you want to put your work up, do it. I'll be glad to give you the Artist Support Pledge logos and stuff, and you can start putting your stuff up. And when you generate the revenue, as I said, you either give it to another artist, or alternatively, if you can afford it, give it all away, give it back to try to help those that are really suffering with the pandemic. And if anybody likes this imagery, I invite you to go to Gallery Sir and tell them I sent you, and they'll give you a 30% discount on my work, and you're welcome to do that. And I will tell you, anything that you buy from my gallery for at least the foreseeable future, I will be donating to the food bank. Make sure everybody is as best as we can to take care of people. And with that, Bruce and Glenn, I think I am finished.
Wow. I want to thank you for coming and showing us all this amazing work and pointing us in these great directions. If anybody has any questions, please ask them now.
Gary, I think when we were on the phone earlier, you mentioned that you're in a couple other galleries as well.
Yeah, I'm in a gallery in Colorado, and another one in the East Coast. And those are, you know, I'm not there very much. The main gallery is the one here in Carmel, and the reason I like that gallery is because I can go there on weekends and talk to people, and start to get feedback from folks. I think you guys might be surprised at how our work impacts people. It surprised me. I thought, you know, for the most part, it would be people like us that really like this imagery, but I've been astounded at folks who have no clue what they're looking at, but they find it compelling. And they're not just trying to match the color for their couch when they hang it on their walls. There's something about it that seems to move them. And then when you are able to tell them the astronomy, what the natural history is of what they're looking at, it just has even greater impact. That one imagery I showed you, that image of the Cygnus wall, it's hung in the Gallery Sir next to another image of high view of Big Sur, the Big Sur coast. And there's real similarities in those two structures. They look like rugged coastlines, right? Except, you know, one is just down the street and you're looking at a half a mile of beach. And in the case of this, you're looking at a structure that's 20 light years long. But in both cases, the shape is, cases, wind and waves are shaping the Big Sur coast, and you have star energy shaping this dust and gas. So there's all these parallelisms that when you describe this to folks, they get whacked out, man. So I'm just really excited because all of us can now, with these tools, make some remarkable stuff. And like I said, this is brand new, man. Anything we start to move into that's a little unusual, it may be for the first time. No one's ever made an image like that before. So I invite you all to participate in that. Don't just make the same old stuff. Try something different.
Thank you very much.
Unless you're Alan Pham. If you're an Alan Pham, keep doing whatever the hell it is you're doing, Alan. It's the best I've ever seen.
I agree. He's amazing. Hopefully he'll join us sometime like this.
Alan should be
your
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 guest speaker.
your website is GaryLopezPhotography.com, right?
Yes, it is.
Okay, all right. I think that's it for now.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you so much. Glenn, we were going to talk about a couple of announcements.
Oh, yeah. Do you want me to drag that over, or do you have it?
I think I have it somewhere. Let's see here.
Well, I do have it right here.
SJ-Astronomy, more events.
Okay.
Coming. Okay, so
let me.
Friday the 22nd, this Friday, we have Astronomy 101, Sights of the Cosmos, Intro to Astronomy, which will be an online event. It's a meetup. And if you click on, if you go to the meetup for this Imaging SIG meeting and you go to the bottom and you follow the link for SJAA events, for more events, you'll see the upcoming events. There's another one on Saturday that is called the Armchair Star Party. It's an online virtual star party. We're going to have a few imagers. Hopefully the skies will cooperate, and we will be going to a number of different targets, and we'll have people talking about what we're looking at as we stack images live. And let's see what else. We'll also be going over a lot of other things. Yeah, that's okay. Solar observing on Sunday at 2 o'clock in the afternoon has been actually moved to the 24th. Yeah, the 24th. Sunday there's a astro imaging workshop that we're going to be participating in. Glenn is going to be doing some presenting on a number of topics related to imaging, and we will we'll be there.
More live stacking, hopefully. Yeah, if the
more live
good.
stacking. Yeah. The weather is it comes and goes as far as the forecast. Right now, I think the weekend actually looks pretty good. So let's keep our fingers crossed. It's been a rough winter in a number of ways. Anyway, thanks everybody for coming, and we'll see you soon at one of our other events. All right, take care.
And we're out.